All right, it is time for the Friday mailbag. And what a mailbag it is. If you have something to say, you can email info@davidpakman.com. Respectful messages are always preferred, but they can be about absolutely anything that's on your mind. So let's start today with Vincent. Vincent is, as usual, not happy with me, and he's not happy with Jews. And okay, so Vincent says, why would any Jew or black be in favor of gun control? If I were a member of a group that was put in danger of extermination, as the Jews were by 30s and 40s Germany, I would never give up my arms. Similarly, the very first Jim Crow laws passed after Reconstruction were laws prohibiting the ownership of firearms by blacks. If someone ever enslaved me, I would never turn over my guns. An armed person is a citizen. An unarmed person is a potential slave. So this is this particular email is not overtly anti-Semitic. This Vincent guy, every email is about Jews one way or the other. He can't send an email without mentioning Jews. But to the point here, first of all, there's two sides to this. Number one, the whole concept of if the Jews had guns in Germany, there would have been no Holocaust. It has been studied extensively by historians, and it has been widely debunked. It is not true that if Jews had handguns in Germany, or even rifles in Germany right before the Holocaust, that it would have prevented it. And similarly, in the United States, when folks think handguns and AR-15s are going to prevent government tyranny if it really came to it with the tanks and the Black Hawk helicopters and the shoulder-mounted RPGs, it's not. So either the argument doesn't make sense, or you're saying citizens should be able to own those arms, or, you know, I've actually talked to Ben Shapiro about this, and you can find that conversation on our YouTube channel. But the second piece is the following one. I am sensitive to the idea that, government tyranny aside, is it really good if only the right-wing nuts have the guns? And that's why many of my liberal friends are now firearms owners. And as I've said before, I don't talk about my own ownership or lack thereof of firearms, but there are many people I know who say, I don't even really like guns, but I don't want only the right-wing nuts to have them. And it is sort of a race to the bottom. That's the sad thing about it. Next email is from Nathan. Nathan writes in about the Overton window and says, David, sir, are you familiar with the Overton window? This concept seems to be the reason why Pence has been characterized as saving democracy by simply doing his job, opposed to Trump's insanity. It's similar to the concept I've heard you describe before as hypernormalization. Adam Curtis rocks too. This concept is very hard to work into conversations with the Trump supporters in my life. Any tips to deal? Much love from a very red upstate New York area. Yeah, I've been spending more and more time in upstate New York. It is shockingly right wing. And, you know, when you look at New York as a state, it's very blue, but that it's extremely skewed by the city and a few other spots. But I've spent a lot of time lately, like in the Hudson area, and right in Hudson, it's quite blue, but everywhere around, I haven't looked at the maps, but it looks very deep red. You know, Joe Biden has dementia, lawn signs, and all sorts of different stuff. But yes, it is absolutely true that when the Republican Party has lost its mind, when Mike Pence says, I can't overturn the results, some people go, what a hero. What a pro-democracy hero he is. When Liz Cheney says, hey, Joe Biden really won and Trump incited the January 6th riot, we go, wow, what a heroic, reasonable Republican. Because in comparison, they seem that way. But these are not heroes. These are just some of the few somewhat attached to reality voices that remain in the Republican Party. Neil wrote in about my Alex Jones impression. And Neil says, David, since you asked, I don't really like your Alex Jones impression. Not because it isn't very good, but because as a person with a lisp, I cringe heavily when people fake lisp. To me, it seems your impression is just a heavy lisp, not a heavy smoker, as the caller mentioned. Anyway, love the show. Yeah, is that even a lisp? Like when Alex Jones says globalists, I don't think of that as a lisp. I think of a lisp as something else where, anyway, I'm not going to even mimic it now. We're not making fun of lisps. We're not doing any of it. That being said, there is this thing. I don't know if it's a lisp, but I don't know if you guys have noticed that Don Jr. and Ivanka they seem to have fake teeth that are a little bit too big for them. And it makes them speak in a weird way. I don't think that's a lisp either. Maybe I just don't know enough about what counts as a lisp. But anyway, we're certainly not making fun of lisps here on the show. Thank you, Neil. Jillian wrote in about fuel prices. Jillian says, fuel prices have an impact on cost of living. That's undeniable. But it amazes me that Americans cannot see the whole picture. For a long time now, the low cost of fuel in the U.S. has been an enviable luxury as seen from other countries. Now prices have risen across the world. In fact, in Ghana, where I currently live, the price of a gallon of diesel has rocketed to $7.17 or $5.95 a gallon, depending on whether you use UK or USA gallons. This is in a country where many live well below the poverty line, and this price rise has extreme effects. I sympathize with all people who are suffering at the moment, not just those in one country. Yeah, so one of the things we have to acknowledge is it can both be true that paying $4.50 a gallon instead of $2.50 a gallon in the United States is a major impact on a lot of families. That's true. And also prices in the US for fuel are really low compared to the rest of the world for the most part, other than some extremely, oil producing rich nations. I think like in the Emirates, fuel is really cheap. But that's because fuel prices in the U.S. have not been accurate in terms of representing the true cost of fuel. Gasoline prices are subsidized in the U.S. and the production is subsidized. So what that means is there's a lot of the production is subsidized and the environmental impact is not accurately reflected by the prices that we pay. So we are not accurately charging the end user for gasoline and diesel. That's the truth in the United States. And when gas prices more accurately reflect their full cost, including on the environment, people drive much smaller fuel efficient vehicles. When I was in Spain about somewhere between a month and 10 years ago, I don't know, it's a blur. No, I think last summer. When I was in Spain last summer, 10 months ago, I rented a relatively fuel efficient vehicle. I don't even remember what it was. There's all these little vehicles that they have in Europe that we don't have here in the US, stick shift, little hatchback, and quite fuel efficient. And it was still really expensive to drive around because you have to convert euro to dollar and you have to convert liters to gallons and do a whole thing. I think it was roughly 7 something a gallon. And just doing a reasonable amount of driving still cost a bunch. The tolls are very high. Driving around is much more accurately priced in Europe and in other parts of the world. So 100% Jillian is correct. Gerson wrote in about David Beardman and says, hello, David, I am writing this to implore you to grow out your beard. I see limitless potential in your facial hair. Clean up the neckline, set your follicles free. I assure you, you will have elegant whiskers in no time. Use jojoba oil and a beard balm of your choice. To keep everything healthy and moisturized, a boar hair brush is also a worthwhile investment. Sincerely, a man with a similar beard. Yeah, what happened was when the baby came and then I had the unexpected time off and all these different things, I just didn't have time to shave. Last night I did a little cleanup and I cleaned up the neckline and everything. I am willing to get creative with the beard. That is not something I am afraid of. Let's see where it goes. Fletch wrote in and says, why not arm the military with baseball bats and knives? Sir, a common argument I'm coming across from the right is that knives and baseball bats can kill. Yet we have no restrictions on those. So why have restrictions on guns? In that case, why not send the troops into battle only with knives and baseball bats? Surely if a bat is just as lethal as a high-powered rifle, then purchasing said rifles for the troops is a waste of taxpayer dollars. Of course, yeah, I mean, it's sort of tongue-in-cheek, but there's some sense to that. If it were true that knives and baseball bats and hammers and all these things are potentially just as deadly as guns, then why waste all the money on guns for the military and for police? Yes. Now, there are some pretty easy holes to poke in that, but it is a fair question to be asking regardless. Philip writes in and says, what's the controversy over the word expat? David, the following question is in regards to a response of yours about how to identify Ukraine on the YouTube video entitled Trump on His Knees for Jesus. That's a great video. As an expat living in Thailand, I did not know there was a controversy surrounding the term expat. Could you explain it again? So here's the deal with the term expat. I have two answers to this. On the one hand, the reason the term expat has gotten controversial is that there's a sort of like racialized class element to it. And I'll explain it to you. When someone from Thailand comes to the United States, we rarely call them expats. We call them immigrants. And when an American goes to Thailand, we often don't say, I'm an immigrant. People say, I'm an expat. So I think you can understand how implicit in that there's potentially a class and a race element to it. But I also want to go further. Sometimes when the white dude, assuming Philip is an American white dude, when the white dude goes to Thailand, they're not going and finding work in the local economy. They're either going already as sort of semi-retired, or they're going and working a remote American job and earning US dollars while in Thailand. That's different than someone from Thailand who comes to the United States and has to find work. Let's call it like professional, not a doctor that comes to the US to become a doctor from Thailand, but people in the service industry. And so on the one hand, there's this kind of race class thing where when the Americans go elsewhere, we call them expats. And when people from other countries come to the US, we call them immigrants. Sometimes there is a difference, which is you go and you're, a remote worker for a tech company in Thailand. And that's a little bit different because your relationship to the Thai economy is then something other than when someone comes to the US and works like in the service industry. So I think that there are differences between types of immigration, and that's the controversy that exists over the term expat. Here's a few bonuses. Jesse commented on YouTube, "Dear David Pakman, you have never needed a gun and you have no right to speak about guns." Well, number one, saying I have no right to speak, that doesn't sound like you support free speech. I have no right to speak, but this is very dumb. This is like saying if you've not been in the military, you can't have an opinion about the Iraq War. We heard some right-wingers saying that during George W. Bush's Iraq War. That's silly. And also, you have never needed a gun. I have chosen not to talk about my personal relationship to guns on the show, including my ownership or lack of ownership of firearms. So I think it's neither here nor there, but you don't know anything about my relationship to guns. Okay, Jesse, thank you very much. Another YouTube comment, no cap, but I honestly thought Pakman was like 26 or 27 years old tops. Please share your skincare routine, David. Okay, here's my skincare routine. I use face lotion with SPF 15. I just use it, okay? So when I'm out there, I've got sunscreen. Summer, winter, spring, fall, I've got SPF. And then otherwise, that's really it. I use a vitamin C cleanser in the shower. Thank you very much. And lastly, from John. John says, people wake up. Mr. Pakman is our enemy. Mr. Pakman hates the common American. I wonder why he didn't talk about Biden's mental health. I've actually talked about it many times. Also, why did he not talk about Biden stopping the feds from dealing with the virus and making it the state's problem? What? Funny, wasn't that Biden's big campaign promise to end the virus? What the hell? Pakman, how much is Big Pharma and George Soros giving you to give us propaganda? Nothing. I bet you're, Y-O-U-R, a millionaire from them, not from the common American. You're, Y-O-U-R, a sellout, and people are beginning to see this. I couldn't possibly address that in the way in which it should substantively be addressed, so let me do a presented without comment. Thank you very much to everybody who wrote in. info@davidpakman.com. Bonus show coming up. Just me on today's bonus show. No Pat. Pat's gone, but you'll get me, for better or worse. Sign up at joinpakman.com. Otherwise, we'll see you after the July 4th holiday. One of our sponsors is Immi. Hands down, some of the best ramen noodles I've had. Just like any instant ramen, you pop Immi into the microwave or on the stovetop for a few minutes and it's ready to go. But what makes Immi different is that it is packed with 21 grams of protein, lower in sodium, 100% plant-based, with 18 grams of fiber for digestive health, and it tastes excellent. So many of the other ramens are bland, simple, artificial. Imi uses high quality ingredients and recipes. You get a zing of flavor I've never had with any instant ramen. Imi comes in amazing flavors like spicy beef, tom yum shrimp, and black garlic chicken. If you try Imi and don't love it, you get your money back. You'll get $5 off when you go to imieats.com/Pakman and use the code Pakman at checkout. The link is down below.